See, we're turning our attention to the all-important issue of security. And this morning, we're joined by Mr. Oyekachi Adekoya, security consultant. He's right here with us in our Lagos studio. And we're expecting Mr. Derule Shinaba, who's the former AIG Zone 4 headquarters, former CP Adamawa FCT Abuja, and Kano, as well as former Commandant Police Academy Woodhill in Kano State. We expect he will join us via Zoom this morning. But let's start off with Mr. Adekoya. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program. Yeah. You know, a lot of people thought the security issues went away, but clearly not. And first, they were jolted to reality by the killing of the vigilantes just early in the week, over 60 of them. And, you know, I saw the video, and it was heart-wrenching. It was sad in all angles. And just yesterday again, yet another attack, this time on the deputy governor of Kebbi State. We had soldiers dying, policemen dying, vehicles burned, and this looks like an onslaught. I mean, we're used to getting onslaughts on bandits. We hear those reports, what, 200 killed over a period of time, but it looks like the act or the script has flipped now. The onslaught is on security operatives. And that's on the back of the GTI, which says we have improved. So putting all of this together, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I saw the report by GTI. I wonder where they get their data from. It will be interesting to interrogate their data set. Maybe also they have not taken into cognizance the fact that we declared bandits officially as terrorists. So even if they were reading activities only in the northeast, even that also looks like a fair underestimation of what's really happening there, because soldiers die every day in the northeast. You see reports of soldiers killed in action, wounded in action. Civilians also get killed and sometimes get caught in a crossfire in the northeast. It is right that that report says that they noticed a downward reporting of incidents by Boko Haram because, of course, Shekaru was ousted, and now you have ISWAP being the dominant player now in the Northeast. I'm just trying to dimension the report a bit before I come to the other part of the question. And so now if you notice, very early last year into late last 2 years ago, swaths of Kanuri youths were denouncing their membership of Boko Haram because basically what is now happening there has gone beyond a local youth cult-like insurgency to now having foreign machineries, entrenched trained fighters with transnational networks in the Lake Chad and the whole Sahel region. So if GTI is reporting a reduction in Boko Haram activities, there's no rocket science there. But I think that that report also doesn't cover activities in the Northwest, which is where Kebbi comes to play. And if you recall, over last year, while Kebbi was in the middle of the insurgency in the Northwest, Kebbi seemed a bit isolated from the happening, particularly when you look at what's happening in Katsina, Zamfara, Kaduna. Kebbi and Kano were almost like the bright spots in that northwest axis. So it just looks as though that over time the chicken has come home to roost somewhere in Kebbi. So Kebbi is no longer the sleeper state it used to be. The fear now is that Kano is beginning to join the fray. Kaduna is completely awash with incidents. 2 weeks or last week, the Kaduna State government put out an alert that there's a new threat of IED, because there were 2 reported incidents of IED explosions in quick succession that jolted almost everybody in Kaduna. So Kaduna, we receive reports every day of people being killed, kidnapped, soldiers killed, and the rest. That GTI report doesn't also give a fair estimate of what's happening. To come to the issue of law enforcement being killed, people die. Law enforcement die every day in the southeast, in the south-south. There's practically no part of this country where policemen and soldiers don't die maybe on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So that's the sadness about the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria.
You know what's also quite instructive, and just to follow up on that point you made about security operatives, is that the report actually said that attacks against police and prisons increased substantially.
Yes.
In fact, the report, while it said that the deaths dropped, the attacks increased.
Yes.
And that's throughout Nigeria. But regarding this, Kebbi particularly, I'd like us to speak to the recent ones.
Yes.
Kebbi, and they say it's a border between Kebbi and Niger State. Kebbi is a northwestern state. Niger is north central, as it were. And you've said that Kebbi seemed a little bit like the bright spot, Kebbi and Kano. And I recall that the governor of Kaduna had said that, there should be simultaneous bombardment of these bandits, such that as they're being displaced from, let's say, Kaduna, they probably want to move to a neighboring state. They're also being displaced or bombarded at that point, and we have that bombardment. And I think he mentioned a sixth state, either in north central or the northeast. But the point is, it would seem as though they're being displaced and they have maybe moved to Kebbi, which is perhaps a cold spot for them. Would that be a plausible explanation for the recent onslaught we're seeing?
Not at all. That's a reactionary explanation. If you do a deep dive into what's causing that movement, they fanned out from the northeast.
That's where terrorism is originally.
Yes, so what you're seeing now, it's a combination of two factors. There's a transnational network in that Sahel region. There's crisis in Mali coming down, affecting the northwest. Okay? Then you had entrenched criminal groups. Forget about the terrorism they call themselves. They are all armed criminal groups because at the heart of the activity is economic interest. Now, they found out from the northeast when the onslaught of the military became very hard on them when this Buhari, when Buhari administration came to play. So we've seen a reduction in bomb blasts and some of these overt attacks and the rest. So because of the onslaught, they had to fan out to set up new territories. Now, at the time they were moving into the northwest, already in the northwest, you had issues of armed banditry and cattle rustling. Cattle rustling was the major issue. By the time these elements came, mixed up with the other elements, of course, they had some infightings. Those infightings are still going on. You then had other people fan out a bit more into the north-central axis. When you look at the forest regions between Niger, Zamfara, Kaduna axis, and even coming to Abuja. Abuja is not spared, the remote communities in Abuja. So there is this movement of these elements into new territories to set up shop for themselves. That's what's driving the movement. And that's why, if you recall, last year, the Niger State governor came out to raise an alarm that they have hordes of terrorists in Niger State.
But you can't rule out the current onslaught, as it were, as also responsible for that movement.
So it's movement. It's all, the point I'm making is, yes. So the military is currently engaged in operations in over 31 states in Nigeria. This limited military with limited resources that we have. We have now a domesticated military. We cannot even project force or power in West Africa because the military has become over-domesticated. The knock-on effect is that the police force or police service or police force, as our constitution calls them, has also become domesticated because over 50, 60%, 50 maybe averagely, moderately, 50% of the force that the police has is now protecting private interests, VVIPs, and the rest. So you have soldiers now overstretched. If you hit them in Kaduna and you hit them in Katsina, of course they will move and they will fan out and they will come to new territories, set up shop again. It becomes a reaction. That's why I said the analysis is quite reactionary. What is driving the movement is the fact that our national security setup is playing catch-up. We are not set up to be proactive. We cannot even take the initiative. The insurgents, the criminal elements have the initiatives as it is today.
And all we do is react.
That's just, so you will be, tomorrow now or next, you will hear the IGP sending a crack force to Kebbi. You will hear the military set up a new operation in Kebbi. So then attention goes to Kebbi. But what's happening in Kaduna? Every day.
My apologies.
Yes, please.
You've spoken to the GTI.
Yes.
You've also spoken to some of the issues that are at home. And it would seem like you're saying maybe GTI doesn't really have some home data
Correct.
that they should have. That's what you're saying.
Correct. They lack local knowledge.
So where then does their data come from?
If you reference that report, they've said from onset, that's open source information.
Okay.
That's what you call open source intelligence. Okay. They've gotten everything open source. And recall also that there's a bit of a media blackout over some of these reportings and activities. A lot of issues are currently underreported.
Now, where I'm going with this line is a reference to what the governor of Sokoto State also said, that they are aware, they're not unaware, that informants are collaborating with bandits to get some things done, to foster some unrest, some attacks on communities. So I don't know, where would you put that? Is that also reactionary? Because just as you said,
yes,
it's not unknown that these people fan out, as you have said,
yes,
by the local communities.
Yes.
And the expectation, the appeal by security forces, including the president and even some governors, is let people give information to security agencies. But we've also seen what comes out of that sometimes. You give information to security agencies, the bandits react, so to speak. So I don't know what you make of all of this now. So on the one hand, are the attacks?
Yes.
On the other hand, the people who are in the middle of it sometimes give information to bandits as opposed to giving information to security agencies. Then I don't know, what are we going to do?
I think I'll try and provide some context so that we understand when politicians are trying to play on the intelligence of the people. The DSS has operatives in all the local governments in Nigeria, the 774 local governments in Nigeria. The DSS has assets on ground. Even in Dikwa, or Mafa, or Puka, or different places, what you call deep field locations, they have eyes, ears on the ground. So I disagree that intelligence is the problem. We have the NIA. The military has its own intelligence unit. The police has its own intelligence unit. The customs has its own intelligence unit. The NSCDC has its own intelligence unit. So intelligence is not a problem. I think that people are trying to insult our intelligence to say that intelligence is the problem. Intelligence is not a problem.
What then is
because they have actionable intelligence.
I think the question here is
the
compromise
yes,
that happens. So you have informants, and I think it was the attacks on the vigilantes. One of the accounts says, the vigilantes wanted to attack the bandits, as it were, just spring up on them. But it looked as though the bandits got word of that planned attack, so they sprung up on them first, and that was so. This is compromised intelligence,
not
a lack of intelligence.
What you're explaining now is what we'll call counterintelligence.
Right.
So we don't give, and I don't want to be quoted out of context. You are dealing with a highly militarized setup. Okay, these ragtag bandits, as you want to call them, have intelligence. So while you are building intelligence on them, they also have assets. They have homids, they have human intelligence also. So while our military drives out on a fighting patrol, they sometimes fly blind. But the insurgents have, once you see troop movement, because we are regimented, once you see troop movement, they get heads up. Why do you think the ambushes that occur every now and then, there's a website where these people publish attacks against the Nigerian state. So every time you move out in any formation, in some of those communities, they also have human intelligence. So it's all counterintelligence. I'm saying we have intelligence, they have the intelligence, but you look at intent and capability.
Okay. I want to take this to...
Sorry, Gadi.
Yes.
So they have intelligence, we have intelligence. Now, and you talked about actionable intelligence the other time. What then is the shortfall?
What is missing is capability.
On the part of who?
Local, you see, that's why we come
capability
back again.
On whose part?
On the part of the way we have set up. We are playing a David and Goliath fight. The insurgents in this case would be the David. The Nigerian state, with all its federal might and posture and everything, would be the Goliath. But the initiative is with the insurgents because they can explore spaces and places. In security, you have to look at space and place. So we have a very large expanse of land to cover. We are spread thin. we cannot be everywhere. It's like when the military had the super camp strategy and they had the forward operating bases. So what they tried to do with the forward operating bases was to spread out and have those forward operating bases closer to the action and cut off the supply line of the insurgents, you know, and then take the initiative to them. But when you have those FOB strategy, you must also have close air support or a non-standoff precision munition to be able to provide support to those troops you have put in the front lines and then give them response or give them cover. So we don't have the required resources or the tooling to effectively cover the entire landmass of Nigeria. These people have local knowledge of the terrain. They have local knowledge of the community. These are community people in some cases with a very well-entrenched value chain. There are people who supply fuel, who supply them food, who supply them information, who supply them all sorts of things, even within the community. So we are dealing with this matter with kids' glove.
I don't think, just as you said earlier, I don't think it's because we don't have this information.
Yes.
Government has this information.
And should have.
I expect that government has. I mean, you would tell us here from time to time that every governor or even the president, they always receive...
yes, they receive weekly, monthly briefing.
Security reports and
yes.
all of that. So it's not that these things are not known. So then the question is, what are we supposed to do to get ahead of them? I remember a number of times the military, the police, even some of these politicians that you talked about the other time said they have been able to identify that poverty, hunger, unemployment are some of the reasons that these things happen. So what then is wrong in getting ahead of these things by making these things go away?
You know, I've come to a point in my own thinking about Nigeria that sometimes I used to be quite bothered, but I think that the lack of knowledge, the crass level of ignorance within the political class is our problem. Look at the police reform act that they were trying to push. Why did they stop it? For selfish reasons. The lawmakers said they don't want to make the governors become demigods by giving them state police. Because if the governor has a political opponent, he can, with the state police, put that political opponent out of business. That's the only reason. That's the only reason this set of wonderful human beings have given as to be the reason why we cannot have state police. Not because they've not cited lack of resources. They've not cited security issues. The core reason they give, politics.
And it would seem at the expense of
security,
as it were.
Security. And that's why, sorry, just to come back, I say, when you have actionable intelligence and you don't have capability and capacity on the ground to deal with that information, your intelligence is useless.
Well, we've seen office holders, being attacked as well. I talked about the deputy governor of Kebbi State who was attacked, and he, talked about it. Sadly, we had soldiers and policemen who were killed during that attack. I'll be honest with you, I looked at the map, the GTI map, and I realized that there are actually countries around Nigeria that have not been impacted at all by terrorism. Let me just mention, we have Ghana, Congo, countries that are just maybe a country away from Nigeria, and you'd expect that they will be affected as well. And I thought, what is peculiar about, what are the peculiarities of those countries? And I realized that population is one of them. These countries are perhaps smaller. And I think it maybe comes to the point you were making about Goliath, the setup being heavy and huge. Try to break it into bits. Do you think perhaps we should reconsider that state police bill in the Constitution Amendment? Do you think that will help us to set up in smaller parts so we can handle, because you hear ungoverned spaces and you think, wait a minute, these people have governors, they're not ungoverned as it were, so we're set up too big as it were. What will it take to consider, readjustments, state police or what have you?
Yeah, so firstly, we must identify the fact that we're a nation set up to over-administrate, okay, and the focus is now on administration, no longer on the people. Yeah. So we have local government chairmen who, by law, are actually the chief security officers of their local governments. Some of them don't even reside in their local governments. Some local government offices are not operational until when they come to share location, and then they close shop and they go. I served in some very remote parts of this country. Okay? So when there is no governance, nature abhors a vacuum. In some places, the people pay tax to return to their farm. We've seen instances where these people write to communities and say, pay this money, otherwise you'll be attacked. And in some communities, they outright pay. And let's not think that this happens only in the north. Even in Ogun State here, there are some remote communities in Ogun North that are having these running issues. The Bales are having to confront some of these issues. And when you cited some of these neighboring states around us, countries, it's not absolutely true that they don't have their issues. Ghana has its own issues in its northern region. Cameroon has its own issues in its northern region. Chad has issues. Niger has issues.
Ghana,
Congo, even Ghana is also having some of these issues. The Congo is not absolutely immune. Even Kenya, if you look at the reports coming from Kenya, Kenya is facing the same type of incidents we're experiencing currently now in the north. So it's a sub-Saharan issue, but something coming from the Sahel region, from that Eritrea to Ethiopia belt, affecting states coming down. So it's a broader issue. The AU has to look at it. ECOWAS has to look at it, and we have to deal decisively with the issues in the Sahel. Okay? But coming down, every sensible emphasis, every sensible approach to security has to be local. Otherwise, it will fail. If you don't have the initiative at the local level, if you refuse to take command to the front lines where command is necessary, you will have actionable intelligence, but you'll be waiting for your state command. The state command will be waiting for the Abuja command. The person, the big man in Abuja, may be in a meeting with the senator, may be in a meeting with the CEC, may be somewhere on one national assignment, and there's something needing urgent attention. And sometimes the people in the forces also need to read the body language of the public office holders to be sure whether to act or not to act. As an example, we find that when you have election cycles in Nigeria on the eve where you're going to have a major change, as we have now in 2023, crime seems to peak significantly. Some people argue that some of these politicians will say to law enforcement, let's taper down a bit on law enforcement activity and drive, because these are the people that we vote. Let's reduce a bit enforcement and something. So you find court activity, court clashes.
Can you?
Yeah, I said some reports will suggest.
Oh, I see.
I didn't say emphatically.
Well, you know, you put it out there already.
Yeah,
so
no, I said some reports will suggest. And I wouldn't put my credential out there completely. But we have also been involved in providing security for some elections in Nigeria. So if you want to take me that up on that, we can discuss off air. So some reports will suggest that. So you find that while you have local jostling, because you have these different rival gangs positioning for political patronage, who controls what territory and what, because it's all election season. So a lot of things happens during the eve of every election. And you need to go into the data bank to see that what I'm saying is right. So there's an uptick of violence because of election cycle. So that's happening on the one hand. And that may be the reason why we're seeing some of these crime statistics spike up.
So how do we better protect our law enforcement? Because looking at this GTI, which has been like one of the major crux of the conversation, you see that attacks on, security operatives have increased. And, sometimes you say security operatives and you forget that they are actually like you and I. Yeah. They have family members. Yeah. And I mean, they chose to do that just to protect, perhaps to provide a means of livelihood for themselves, but ultimately to protect you and I. So how can we better protect them? I recall you said that about 50% of police men are now guarding private,
private interests
and all of that. I don't know if that's official
VIP,
from the police.
They're about plus and minus.
Is that an official position
Not
from
an
the
official
police?
position from the police, but if you look at some VIPs who have, some of them have almost 14, 16 policemen with them.
So how do we better protect them as we wind down?
Yeah, so unfortunately, again, I'm sure that the police should be happy that we're speaking up for them like this. They are like beggars in this instance. They have no choice because the law forbids them from protesting, from speaking up. So there's a lot of improvisation going on within the system. They give you an assignment to do, you have to, how you do it and how you get it done is your bloody problem.
Just get it done.
Because the system is also handicapped. Because there is still a hijack. The military has left power, but they've not left power. Because the military ideology is still there, where other forces and other arms are not giving the required attention they need because, you know, resources scarce. And then we are competing, which explains why the military barracks always looks clean, prim and proper, as opposed to the police barracks. Just even a case in point, go to Obalende there. You see the nonsense we have there as a barracks for the police. And you put them in all sorts of rubbish conditions, forgive my language, and then you expect the best of them. The police force authority has been clamoring for resources, for weapons, for different munitions, and they are not getting it. So how they can't protest, they can't speak up, they can't speak out, they are the ones dying every day. They get shot in the line of duty. Families are practically on their own.
So what do we do to protect them?
Unfortunately, the people that we do something to protect them are the people in the House of Assembly.
So let's speak to them.
I can't speak to them. Nigerians should speak to them. I've said my own fair share. I mean, some members have to be recalled by their constituencies because what they are doing there is a shame and it's a sham. Some of them can't even go back to their constituencies. They are being attacked left, right, center, and we're all busy playing politics. So the truth about the matter in Nigeria is that, I mean, we need to quit all this senseless narrative and political narrative of OD. How is this thing any different? Some governors have taken over without state police, completely taking over structures of the party in their states without state police.
Clearly, this calls for, I don't want to say a rejigging, because that word has been abused a lot, but
it's
clearly
a paradigm shift. We need to achieve a major paradigm shift and focus on ensuring local capacity building at the local levels.
Well, Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, we have to thank you so much. I mean, you've proven quite insightful in this conversation. But Mr. Adekoya is a security consultant, and we wish we had Mr. Shinaba joining us via Zoom, but hopefully we'll do that some other time. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.